Just outside the quarantine station, we board an early bus to Manly, so named for the confidence and manly behaviour of the Aboriginal people that Governor Phillip had encountered there. 7 miles from Sydney and 1,000 miles from Care with the 1940s promotion, and for thousands of visitors to Manly, so it has always been. But it wasn't free from Care in 1790 when Governor Phillip met right here with Bennelong, who, along with Colby, had previously escaped British captivity. When Phillip landed from his boat, Bennelong shook his hand warmly and called him Bianga, or father, but what followed seems in retrospect to be a ritual spearing or payback. The spear pierced the Governor's right shoulder. It was so long that he couldn't run to the boat without the end hitting on the ground. He shouted at Lieutenant Waterhouse, "For God's sake, haul the spear out!" Waterhouse, sure they would all die that day on the beach, fumbled with the shaft before managing to break it off. Phillip was bundled into the boat and the men rowed for their lives back to Sydney. Phillip quickly recovered from his wound. 10 days later, he went by boat to meet Bennelong at his camp opposite Sydney Cove. He gave Bennelong a metal hatchet and fishing lines and returned the red jacket that he used to wear, while Barangaroo, Bennelong's wife, received a petticoat and other gifts. 3 weeks later, Bennelong and some friends came in peacefully to the settlement at Sydney Cove.
Even with screaming babies, we're dedicated.
May I? Keep it going.
Little Baxter screaming for the camera.
You're in the photo. Okay, Jeff, you've taken. Well, you're taking his photo or not? Get on with it. This is a great stop on the way for a coffee and something to eat. So we're letting you know, if you go into walkingcoastalsydney.com.au
walkingcoastalsydney.com.au,
you'll see the whole of the route there and all the maps.
Yep.
And you know you're on a continuous route, so you can do different sections.
Okay, walking.
And eventually, you will do the whole lot for Mum, and it's a rite of passage for all people your age now.
It will be.
The Sydney Harbour and Coast Walk. And you'll do it, mate.
And the other baby, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are also going, you are going to come on this walk too, just in a few years' time, mate. Okay. Heading up North Head, which is one of the most significant headlands in the nation, and we're very fortunate to have Mel Tyus, who over here from National Parks and Wildlife Service, who has got considerable knowledge of not only this area but many areas of national parks. And we're also very lucky to have the Deputy Executive Director of the Sydney Harbour Federation Trust, Nick Hollow, and Nick's going to show us through the Federation Trust lands. And then we have Jeff Lambert, who's a one-off, I have to say. Jeff has probably the greatest knowledge of anybody that I know about North Head.
So Bungaree was an Aboriginal man. He was actually king of the Broken Bay tribe, and Governor Cora granted him land at Middle Head, and the idea was to acculturate the Aboriginal people into farming. It didn't work. There were about 16 families involved, and it was effectively the first land grant to Aboriginal people, so it was a really monumental occasion. And in January next year, that marked the 200th anniversary of that occasion at Middle Head. So the harbour is absolutely full of history, obviously.
Sydney Harbour and its basin is one of the newest landscapes on one of the most ancient continents. And it's because it's a flooded river valley. So you would have seen on your walk all the way from the coast up the north, you'll see it all the way through going west, that Sydney has this tilt, and it sits on this tilt. But that tilting layers of sandstone and all the cracks and different sort of patterns of erosion within it then became a harbour when at the end of the last ice age, the ice melted and the water moved in between 20,000 and 6,000 years ago from the coast about 30 kilometres out there and filled what is Sydney Harbour. So Sydney Harbour formed what is rare in the world, which is an exceptional natural harbour.
Walls are a feature of North Head. They're a fad on North Head, really. The first wall went in after the church built the seminary, and the south of here was a quarantine station, north of here was the church land. They needed something to separate the patients from the priests, and the Cardinal Moran, who organised the building of the church, all he wanted to do was just put up an iron fence, but the government said that wasn't enough. And he said, well, I'm not going to build it, you'll have to build it. So in the end, the government built this wall that fundamentally goes all the way from shore to shore. And that started to fad. Whenever they divided up the land, and they divided up the land frequently amongst different landholders, whenever they divided it up, they built a new wall. So we've got 7 kilometres of wall like this on North Head, and I discovered in Manly Library many years ago a fantastic photograph of 3 fishermen trying to get over this wall, and they are, one of them standing here, another one standing on his shoulders, and the third one standing on the shoulders of the second one, and over they go. I don't know how the bottom man got up, but it was a very popular fishing spot. Yeah, I don't know when the hole in the wall was made. This is supposedly the boundary of the national park, but it's not. There's a little triangle of land in here that still belongs to the church. Not many people know that. It was a special favour to one of the bishops who used to like to go fishing over the cliff here.
Well, can I give a legal advice on that? Too bad for the Catholic Church. Possessory rights are 9/10 of the law, and I declare the other 1/10 to have gone to national parks.
Thanks, Phil. We'll take it. So down here, we just look at along this wall. A lot of the walls have been cleared, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is to protect the wall, because lots of things were growing out of the wall, and the other thing is for a fire advantage. So if you have a fire coming through here, you need a line to fight that fire off. And so what we did was a whole of headland fire plan, and that involved the Harbour Trust, National Parks, Northford at the time, the Police College, the Catholic Church, I think Manly Hospital is involved in the school. And the idea of that is so you don't burn all your eastern suburbs Banksia scrub, which is an endangered plant community on North Head. The reason we have eastern suburbs Banksia scrub is that it's on aeolian sand dunes. So these Pleistocene sand dunes that were deposited on North Head, and they've given rise to this unique plant community. And like all Australian bush outside of rainforest, it does need to burn to regenerate. The seeds in the soil need the fire or the smoke to actually regenerate.
As you come along, it's one of my favourite turn around and look back spots.
Oh, yeah.
You get this marvellous vista view.
Goes to show where you've come from, doesn't it, Lou? You know, this is what you can do both ways, and it looks like a different terrain.
I don't believe this colony was established to sort of, you know, remove convicts and get them out of the way. It was for the burgeoning empire of the British and to create a South Pacific, Southeast Asian base. And that's why they needed a defensible place. Now, the reason why North Head is important is that North Head is the gatepost to that. North Head, because of that tilting land, North Head is also the highest point all the way around. Unlike a normal river, which is from the high mountains to the lowlands and deltas in the ocean, this is all back the front, and the Europeans couldn't understand that the highest land was here and everything tilted. So this is the highest point. It's the gatepost to the harbour, the defensible point. It was occasionally, after the last ice age, an isolated tide island, because Manly, that thriving urban metropolis with just a whole bunch of sand dunes, which occasionally in the big seas that you saw and probably experienced when you went across Curl, would have happened in Manly then too, where down at Ashburner Street, at the base of the foot of this hill, would have occasionally broken through as well. So this was a tide island, and its plant communities and its and the animal life here was probably more akin to what's on the south side of the harbour. The eastern suburbs Banksia scrub characterise the whole of Bellevue Hill, Coogee, Bondi, my neck of the woods. Hardly there now, except at Malabar and pockets of it in Coogee. So for this area too, just like for the Europeans, it was special for the Aboriginal people. You know, because of its semi-isolation, it was a place of ritual, a place of ceremony. It was where the Kadachi man, the keeper of the law, hung out. It was where the medicinal plants were. It was incredibly important, and they managed it. I mean, there were documents about Hunter walking by as the Kadachi man was walking almost 2 steps from him, setting everything alight around him and probably telling him to bugger off in Aboriginal language, which he couldn't understand, and you know, unfortunately too few bothered to do so.
Though the weather remains overcast and windy, we've spent a wonderful morning walking the tracks that wind through Sydney Harbour National Park and Sydney Harbour Federation Trust lands. These state and federal instrumentalities have cooperated to give walkers a terrific natural and cultural experience in one of the nation's premier headland sites, And we've had the benefit of Nick, Jeff and Mel's in-depth knowledge.
Can I give you a toast? Can I give you a toast to the success of the new restaurant Bella Vista?
Yes, to the new Bella Vista.
Here we are at Inner North Head, the entrance to Sydney Harbour. It's about 1.5 miles, couple of kilometres over to the other side at South Head, the south coast down to the Illawarra, heading almost due south from us here. The city on the horizon. The area immediately inside North Head here is what they call Old Man's Hat. It's formerly part of the quarantine station, where the quarantine station people used to come and have picnics. And this was the place where the submarine cable came ashore and went back to South Head, where of course failed to detect the submarines on the night. And all around North Head, where we're standing, over there on Old Man's Hat, all around North Head are a series of ladders and ropes that have been used for sort of since at least the Depression by fishermen who go up and down these cliffs to get to their favourite fishing spots. So North Head was, we don't really know what North Head looked like when Europeans came. It probably looked something like this, but not completely. The Aboriginal people managed the land with fire. And this was the first place we ever saw it happening. They managed the whole of Australia that way. And the early settlers described what they saw. They described it as being like a giant parkland, a gentleman's park. And so it wasn't the thick bush that we know today, but it was a manicured landscape. The Aboriginal people made the landscape, and on North Head we don't know exactly, but on South Head we have good paintings that show what the Sydney area looked like. Manicured to produce grass in some places for kangaroos to graze on, and to build runways where you could herd the kangaroos down into a trap and spear them. And they planted plants. Across Australia they did things like they built dams and fish traps. They had buildings, they dug wells. It was a total agricultural economy, and Bill Gamage has written and called it the greatest estate on earth.
Not really terra nullius.
Not terra nullius, no. This is one of the easternmost points of Australia. This is the North Fairfax Lookout. You can see all the way up into Queensland, if you could see that far, because there's nothing to impede the view from here to there. The local view, of course, is spectacular. It's what people most look at here. And one of the things that you can see here is the difference in the rocks. There's mostly sandstone rock. It's called Hawkesbury sandstone, but there's another type of related rock called the Narrabeen group. So the Narrabeen group is the stuff lower down of the darker colour, and it's all about 400 million years old. What we're looking at from here is all National Park. One of the old walls ends just over here.
We spend too much time here.
So welcome to the third quarantine cemetery. The third cemetery, of course, there were number one and number two. Number one cemetery was down right inside the quarantine station where you guys are staying, and it was only there for about 10 years. The problem with the first cemetery was that people in the dining room could look out the window and see the gravestones. They didn't like that. So they took away the gravestones. They didn't take away the people, but they brought the gravestones up and they started a new cemetery over the road there. That was the second cemetery, and eventually that filled up as well. So they moved the cemetery up here. They didn't move the people, but the new cemetery started here in the 1880s. It's a quarantine cemetery. It's for people who died in quarantine, or it was, until 1900, when there was an outbreak of bubonic plague in Sydney, and one of the people who died, the first person that died of bubonic plague, was a very famous person for very spectacular reasons, that he was a convicted cannibal who ate the cabin boy on a voyage from England to Australia. And after he got to Australia, well, he was convicted and tried and sentenced but pardoned. So he came to Australia anyhow. He was the first person to die of bubonic plague. His case is really, really interesting not because he was the first person to die of bubonic plague, but because it set the standard in English law. You can't just go and kill people because you're hungry. About a third of the people in here are plague victims, and about a third of them are victims of smallpox, cholera and other diseases of the time, and about a third of them are people who died of Spanish flu at the end of the First World War. And some of them, and this plaque is about these guys, some of them were soldiers who set out to go to the war about a week before the armistice, and they got a week out and the armistice was signed and they got called back. They caught the flu while they were on the ship, and so they all had to be quarantined when they came back in, and 15 of them died of the flu, including the fiance of one of them, who was a nurse at the quarantine station. And there's a lot of sad stories in here. There's people, two smallpox victims, one of them 27 years old, the other one 6 days old. The 6-day little girl was the daughter of the woman who died of smallpox. She was probably born with smallpox. It's very sad stories. It's also very interesting botanically because it's the sort of place that remains untouched forever. Cemeteries are like that. They don't get disturbed much, especially abandoned cemeteries, and all over the country the cemeteries are a great repository of interesting plant species, and we get several species of orchids in here, and 63 species of plants grow in here. Some of the plants in the cemetery are red. Nobody knows for sure, but a lot of people think, it's what's under the ground. It's the people, but I think it's to do with water more than anything else.
At North Head we can see where we'll be in 14 days' time and all the crenulations of the harbour that we'll have to walk around to get there. But we're also able to look back from North Head and see from whence we've come. It's starting to feel like a real journey now. Along the way we've been teasing out some of the threads that make Sydney unique. Governor Phillip's explorations through the journals of Lieutenant Bradley and Surgeon White, early observations of Aboriginal life from the notebooks of Surveyor William Govett, and the stunning native flora that's now blossoming on all the headlands. We're also feeling the passion that Sydneysiders hold for their coastline and their jealous determination that it not be privatised. And everywhere we've seen abundant evidence of Aboriginal Australia, not just their middens and axe grinding grooves, but the way they successfully manage the landscape with a simple technology that our modern industriousness seems unable to match.